You know, another thing that took place in this past week was Black Women's Equal Pay Day, a effort to draw attention to the fact that not only do women make less than men, but Black women make significantly less than white men. In fact, the number is well below that of white women as well. It is below that of Black men, of Native American men. It is just ahead of that pay figure for Hispanic men, Native American women, and Hispanic women. So in other words, we still have a kind of economic apartheid underway in this country where your race and your gender is a very strong predictor for how much money you will make as a wage-earning worker in the United States of America. Now, when we say that this is wrong on so many levels, that's not just a figure of speech. It actually is wrong on a number of different levels. Those levels include the way we view women and minorities in this country as somehow being different. Different enough that as a majority white nation, it is not apparently a matter of national urgency for us to fix this blatant injustice, even though it has been going on for quite some time, and I believe was made significantly worse by the financial crisis that Wall Street caused in 2008. But there's another important point about these figures. They show that despite the efforts of certain people, especially within the corporate Democratic Party class, to separate and divide those who fight for economic justice from those who fight for social justice, the fact is that, as Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were both so clear about, the fight for economic justice and the fight for social justice cannot be separated. It is one struggle. As Martin Luther King said, what does it matter if you desegregate a lunch counter if Black men and women don't have the money to buy a hamburger at that lunch counter? This is the perfect example, tragic as it is, of that problem persisting into the modern day, 50 years or so after those words were spoken. So what do we do about it? Number one, we recognize that the struggle for justice cannot be divided. It is indivisible. We stop letting them divide us. We stop letting them say that if you support justice for women, you cannot support economic justice. We stop letting them render the millions of women who support Bernie Sanders or the left or any other reflection of economic justice. We stop letting them render those women invisible in order to pursue their corporate agenda. We stop letting them render the millions of people of color on the left invisible just so that they can pursue their corporate agenda. We understand, and we help everyone understand, that one of the reasons why women make less than men, and one of the reasons why Black women make so much less than white men, is because we live in a country where a few corporations and a few billionaires call the shots for the rest of us. We live in a country where the minimum wage is kept low. We live in a country where we do not have affordable child care or family leave, so that women on whom the burdens of child raising and all of that still disproportionately fall because of gender bias are also disproportionately hit with economic bias, because it makes it more difficult for them to advance up the career ladder. We live in a country where Black people and Black women are denied access to better jobs because of their background, because of their identity, because of what is provided in communities in which they tend to congregate. We have an intersectionality of issues here, not just based on identity, but between identity and economics, and pursuing the understanding of that intersectionality, melding us all into what Jesse Jackson called the Rainbow Coalition, is still the urgent task of the day, and I commit to working for that task. I hope that you all do too. Now, one last note before we leave you for the week. General John Kelly is now the Chief of Staff at the White House, and his first action was firing Anthony Scaramucci as White House Communications Director, actually 2 weeks before his official start date. So Scaramucci apparently traveled back in time to prevent himself from becoming Communications Director, which is, to say the least, interesting. Now we have John Kelly in charge. I think it's important to note this about John Kelly. He is a horrible human being. Now, his tenure at Gitmo, his tenure in the Marine Corps, his many bigoted comments about minorities, including Muslims in this country, attest to it. And here's something else that attests to it. John Kelly, when he was at his last job, supervised Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, that entity that is known now by the acronym ICE. Now, before he left that job, they launched a nationwide sweep. The last sweep of John Kelly's tenure at Homeland Security, it was supposedly designed to catch Central Americans who'd come to the U.S. as family units. But they said, oh no, that was just an accident. They said that the families that they captured were not the intended targets. They were simply also apprehended in a different kind of sweep. Now, the people they said they targeted amounted to less than 200 of those detained. That's out of 650. The other 457 people, nearly 3/4 of those caught up in the sweeps, were the real targets, and they were refugee families. No, we have a government that preaches family values and a White House Chief of Staff who takes families and rounds them up and wants to send them back to where they'll be persecuted.